What's good, family? Thank you for joining me for another episode of the MySpace Effect, Building Influence and Impact. I'm your host, Herschel M. Peters. Feeling good tonight. I got some pretty positive feedback on my last podcast talking about when love fails, leadership stories or lessons from divorce and broken covenant, different things in that aspect. I contemplated doing on a part 2 because I really want to move forward pertaining to the end of relationships, moving into the beginning of one. I'm kind of doing it, some would say backwards, but I feel like if you can learn a lot about the end of something, goes back to my other episode that I was dealing with, how the endings are better than the beginning. Then when you do start something new, you be so leaps and bounds ahead, the likelihood of it being better skyrockets, especially from a leadership capacity. So I'm going to do a part 2, when love fails, when you didn't want the divorce, because there's so many layers and broken covenants and different things like that. I'm going to share my personal story briefly so it can make sense how I can offer some things up from a leadership capacity. If it'll help others, which I believe it will, I don't mind putting myself out there because that's what life is all about. You go through to help others, and the cycle continues to help change lives. So I'm excited, and let's get to it. You love me now. So I got married a few years ago. And you said you always will. And I know because you showed me in the things that you do. And when I know you're looking at the screen like, oh, that nigga goes sharp. He was. It was nice, real nice. Some of y'all probably like, who in the world fumbled this Negro? Who fumbled all of this Herschel chocolate goodness? I'm just meddling. I'm just kidding. In me sharing, I don't want to really focus on my ex. One thing you'll learn in life is that some people in life are just characters in your story or you moving into your destiny. Their significance, apart from just being a mere character, is based on how they respond when it comes to your life personally. The lessons matter, but who they are is insignificant. It's irrelevant, especially at this point. Let's continue on.
Oh, all I have needed, thy God's holy hands has always provided. So great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
You can see we had Kathy Taylor. She sung. Some of this stuff folks ain't never seen. This is unreleased footage. You feel me? Unreleased footage. I really want to make this a lesson deal. I know some people want some more details. I'm sure it's juicy. My goodness, pause. But what I'm saying is that I really want to focus on the lessons. I just wasn't connected with somebody who was just 100% all in on the covenant between myself and God, myself and God, and it wasn't mutual. Which is why when the Bible talks about equally yoked, it's a matter of behavior. You want the same behavior. Personalities is one thing. Behavior is a totally different thing. You want that to be congruent, because that matters. The things that are entailed when it comes to covenant cannot come into fruition when you don't have both parties. I'm using both because God is handling his. When you have both parties, the man and the woman, they're not both locked in. You'll have some slippage. And then if you bring other things into that covenant, that perfect triangle, you create something that God never intended, and you have a problem. And so in my case, I dealt with a lot of broken trust. It was just hard to get things on the same page. When they were for a season, it was amazing. It was short-lived, but it was amazing. But I was so focused on what God had showed me. I just had tunnel vision. But then there was a time where, release it came, and ultimately I had to file for divorce and leave. And because of just constant broken trust and one unwilling to let go of their baggage and really trust and really, and not only let go of their baggage, but really buy into what they vowed to do. And that can be very painful. And that's really what it comes out to. I can get into a whole bunch of majoring in the minors, but my thing is I'm a root guy. So I like to get to the root of things. And ultimately, when it came to that, that was really tough. I dealt with infidelity, being cheated on, lied on, broken trust. The situation got so bad for me, I ended up in the hospital. My blood pressure was at stroke level. It was bad. It was. I mean, it was awful. And a lot of that had to do with when you don't want the divorce. I didn't want a divorce. I filed for divorce because I was serious about not being subjected to wrongness, but I didn't want a divorce because I wanted what God wanted. And I'm sure some out there can understand what I'm saying. Yeah. It's not so much as the individual than it is what you can see what God desires and you hold on to that. So it can be real painful when you see it and you know it's at hand, but then you have resistance and much more. That's really painful. Dealing with somebody who ultimately didn't care, didn't apologize, just went on about their business like, it's nothing. If anything, went on to try to prove that I was insignificant. Now, I'm chuckling about that because it can let you know how callous and cold people can be. And that was another reason why I went through what I went through in marriage, or why it was part of my journey to rid myself of some naivety. I can go on and on and on about my personal, but I really just want to kind of give a small backdrop just so one can understand how I know what I'm talking about and how I'm able to share and talk about this. Yeah, last week episode about when love fails, leadership lessons from divorce, and broken covenant. And it'll make sense to where I'm headed to now. I don't have enough time to go all the way back to all of that, but I want to really deal with the hidden layers of divorce. One of the first layers that I dealt with was guilt and shame, feeling like you failed God and others. That was rough because I take my life seriously in general. However, I really take it serious in the nature of making sure that it's evident that God is a part of, or I'm a part of his agenda and what he wants to do for my life. And when divorce happened, that was tough. I mean, it really, that level of embarrassment, guilt, shame, even the stigma of being divorced, it was tough. And I tell people, when you get married, whatever you're dealing with initially, it's only going to get on steroids. The closer you get to something, the more you feel it. If it's good, it's great. If it's some bad habits, bad things, you really going to feel it. And sometimes you would think people potential, but if they're not doing anything to tap into their potential, you set yourself up for failure. They have to be doing things to tap into their actual potential you see. But broken trust, lying, deception, manipulation, all of this stuff. If you got that involved in a relationship, when you get married, that stuff get on steroids. Oh my God. It does. If it's good things, good value, it's not all about bad, but whatever it may be, basically that's the point I'm making. Whatever it is that you're dealing with before you get married, it's going to get on steroids once you finally say I do. So if you got somebody that can't handle adversity or attacks, and people trying to undermine and just, whether it's spiritual attacks and people hating and mad, you get married, that stuff going to increase. And you're going to find yourself out on the island by yourself often. But guilt and shame was tough. And I felt like I failed God and others. And that was really hard to deal with by myself. It was really a unique situation. And then embarrassment, that stigma of just actually being divorced. That's tough too. I was really dealing with that. Another aspect of a layer of divorce is grief and darkness. You enter that lonely, depressing place. I was there for a while. Actually, that's really what led to me going to the hospital and having, one would say, an anxiety attack, panic attack, because I was already hurt when we separated. And then come to find out you was just cheating on me and sleeping around like nobody business. That, not only led to a broken heart, but already being in a hard place like that, that dark place, oh man, that was it. I couldn't figure out what it was at the time because again, I didn't want divorce. I wanted things to be right, not in a ideal fashion, but things when it's congruent, it would have been right, But that was my desire because I wanted what God wanted. Then there's other areas where you have to put a mask on. You have to pretend to be okay while breaking inside. Another layer of hidden layer of divorce is the impact on kids. There's a ripple effect from a broken family. My ex had a daughter. I don't have any children, but she had a daughter and we were like family. However, when we separated, her daughter heard her talk about me like a dog real bad. And one time I had to go pick up a phone from my ex mother-in-law because my thing is that I'm not gonna be paying these bills and doing all this stuff, and you out sleeping around, and I'm being candid tonight. I'm not giving my stuff back. So when I seen her daughter, I was happy to see her, but I was hurt when she was just like, "Oh, you've been a bad boy." But just the brokenness in the sense of when we tried to reconcile and we met up because so many lies and things were told, even to the child's father, it was just a disconnect. And that hurt me because I really cared. But it was too far gone. And that was really, really sad. And so I can understand in a sense that ripple effect of broken families. I can. Here's a nugget when it comes to reconciliation. Reconciliation revolves around, first of all, the whole purpose of it is to turn bitter and make it sweet. Another component of it, the only way it'll work is you need time and then you need maturity, change. Sometimes if you mature quick enough, the time can be shortened. Emotional, mental fatigue, that's another hidden layer of divorce, the weight of trying to keep it together. That took a toll on me too. And then you have a financial burden that often wrecks stability. Divorce can do that. That financial burden, it can be really bad. Even when I tried to reconcile from separation financially, it was tough having to do all this stuff. Heck, all my money was gone because of mismanagement and stuff just not being right. But tell you something, when you get in a relationship with people, you got to make sure that y'all on the same page. Y'all on the same page and believe the same thing when it comes to financing. Because if you deal with somebody that's compulsive, that's immature, that lacks wisdom, that is, again, impulsive, that's not mature, that is able, you're going to have all kinds of problems. One of the last layers of divorce is confusion. That is trying to process why it happened and what it means. So I was transparent a little bit to give understanding of some hidden layers in a general sense. But I want to really deal with something we don't talk about enough about people who never really wanted the divorce. You have to ask yourself, what do you do when you did everything right? Not necessarily perfect, but you was honorable and integral. You kept your vows and then you still ended up abandoned. This is just not about marriage. This is covenant in general. And I want to come from a leadership capacity because sometimes leaders can feel the same way. You're loyal to a vision, team, or covenant, but still left behind. But when you look at it in this aspect, culture glamorizes divorces. They have parties, they have celebrations. However, at the same token, that's not everybody's story. There is a unseen, as I mentioned before, unseen reality that's full of shame, whispers, loneliness, and guilt. And when it comes to leadership, once you invest years in a team, an organization, only to be betrayed, abandoned, and forced out, that can be extremely heartbreaking. When it comes to a leadership standpoint, what are some of the hidden costs of unwanted separation? You have an emotional cost. Some of it is carrying guilt. You'll feel so bad, you be asking yourself, hey, what could I have done differently? Maybe it was me. I had those moments. I did. I'm like, well, I know I'm dealing with broken trust, lies, and all that. But however, maybe it's something I did to cause somebody to lie, right? But I'm telling you, when you're in the mix, you ain't think about all of that. You just feel so bad. And then you have a social cost that could be full of embarrassment, whispers, feeling misunderstood. I dealt with that too. People that believed me to be who I was, all of a sudden you switched because I got lied on. It's disappointing for people to take one side of a story and then flip. and go on. Obviously, that's needed because you get to see the real. It can be painful, even at a low place, but you can see the real. However, I think that's unfortunate to not have a conversation and get some understanding, clarity, not to be messy, but understanding when you actually care. There is a practical cost as well, a financial strain, a mental fatigue, as I shared earlier about children, family impact. Those things are very costly when it comes to separation. These things matter because people rarely see the weight that leaders carry behind closed doors, the tears, the stress, and the mask that they have to wear. That's some tough stuff. Oh, I'm talking to somebody. Yeah, that's some tough stuff. Even in the midst of that, what all this teaches us regarding covenant and commitment is that some people treat covenant like a contract. Easy to break. Easy to break. Not understanding the severity of it. Leaders and even believers who live by covenant hold a different standard. Loyalty, integrity, and sacrifice. That's why I was so heartbroken when I ended up leaving the church I was at with the pastor that had passed away, because loyalty, integrity, and sacrifice went out the door. He wasn't even in the grave good before all that was broken. And it really changed my perspective on some things regarding leadership and legacy. That was really tough. Some of the people that was in his face smiling and stuff, the same folks that betrayed him. I thought to myself, that don't make no darn sense. Couldn't believe that. That was really tough. And see, some of the lessons behind that is when you build anything worthwhile, whether it's marriage, business, ministry, or even a movement, you'll eventually be tested by broken trust. Yeah. There's a bigger picture in all of this. One has to remember that restoration is possible. And when you get in that wilderness where there's nobody but just seem like you, God, and perhaps facts, your faith in God and facts, that wilderness can really be a workshop. That lonely place can be a workshop. Even if you've been labeled as divorce or failure, you're not disqualified. You're not disqualified. Your worth isn't reduced by your wounds. And being broken doesn't cancel your future. If anything, sometimes it forges it. That can be really tough, but you need to hear that. Some of y'all out there listening to this, still broken. Now, dealing with this can be a touchy subject. I understand, because it's circling around wounds and much more. Why am I saying that? Because number one, not all losses are chosen, but how you respond is. Yeah, these are some lessons I'm giving. Y'all need to write this down. This is some good stuff, huh? Yeah. Number two, faithfulness isn't proven when things are easy. It's proven when someone walks away and you keep showing up. People may leave with part of your story, but they can't take your future. That's why I said earlier about some people in life are just characters to get you to where you need to be. Once you understand that, then that's a game changer. That's a game changer. The significance, the weight that they hold, it can be removed, and it can be made available for somebody that actually deserves it. Number four, titles, positions, or relationships may end, but purpose is unshakable. Never forget that. Purpose is unshakable. Yeah. And lastly, number 5, same God who restores lives restores leaders. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe your divorce just wasn't a spouse. It was a partnership, a friendship, or a leadership covenant that ended before you was ready. But here's the positive note on this. Some would say the good news. Your story doesn't end in the wilderness. It don't end in that dark place. Things will get better eventually. I tell people often, it's not circumstances that define you. It's what you do with them that merely defines you. Everything in life is about how one responds. That is responsibility. Ability is maturity, the ability to respond. How can I respond? That's where maturity is built. That's what betterment it comes from. The more you're able to have access to things in life. People may have walked away, but the author of your story is still writing. So don't lose hope. There's always hope. Let me tell you something. There's always hope in doing what you need to do in life. Your purpose, your calling, everything you need is in that. One of the greatest advice I've gotten when I was going through is to get to work, move into what you're called to do. Yes, you need some time to recover and be honest, have a level of self-awareness. But your purpose, there's always hope in that, and that can be very revigorating. That can be reviving, refreshing, renewing, and moving in that. Whether it's as a single mother, single father, leadership, whatever the case may be, there's always hope in doing what you're called to do in life, your life's purpose. Always hope in that. Always. Sometimes things can seem hopeless because people are not moving in their life's purpose. We have society now where many aren't functioning in their life's purpose. You backbiting, lying. It was never in God's plan for people to be like that. There's no hope in that. And when you have that broken trust and all of those things, that's not one's life's purpose. There's no hope in that. So remember, the label may say divorce, abandoned, or betrayed, but God still calls you. And your purpose is still intact. Don't forget that. Your purpose is still intact. Still intact. Thank you for rocking with me tonight. I went past my typical 10 minutes that I try to limit it to. But my thing is, if this hit home, be sure to share it with somebody who needs hope today. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe. And be sure to join me next week as we continue to talk about leadership, life, legacy in a real way. I really want you to remember, even in the midst of all of this, that your space matters. Your story matters. And your future is still in God's hand. Don't forget that. I'll see you on the next one. All right, peace.